They don't have to kill you to destroy you. Controlling your emotions is enough. That's how the world works. The most effective form of control isn't physical, it's psychological. People don't come with chains anymore. They come with smiles, tears, guilt trips, and emotional blackmail. If they can make you feel, they can make you move. If they can get inside your head, they can make you betray yourself. And the sad truth is, most people don't even notice it happening. You were trained from childhood to think emotions make you human. That feeling deeply makes you good, but the deeper you feel, the easier you are to manipulate. The more you care, the more strings you give others to pull. The more emotional you are, the more predictable, vulnerable, and weak you become. They'll use love to distract you. They'll use fear to control you. They'll use guilt to stop you. Every tear they shed, every sad story they tell, it's not always real. Sometimes it's a tactic. Sometimes it's strategy. Because when people realize they can't win with logic or truth, they turn to emotion. Why? Because emotion bypasses reason. It hijacks your mind. The moment you feel sorry for them, the moment you second-guess yourself, you've already surrendered the battlefield. They've already won. And here's the brutal reality. The most emotional people are the easiest to control. The ones who react instantly. The ones who love blindly. The ones who forgive without punishment. The ones who cry over people who don't even think about them. These people walk around like open wounds, waiting to be exploited, and they are over and over again because they've been convinced that their softness is strength, when in reality, it's a liability. That's why you need detachment. That's why you need to become emotionally bulletproof. Not heartless, not cold, just in control. Emotion isn't the enemy. Being ruled by it is. You need to understand that emotions are tools, not masters. You use them when they serve your purpose. You shut them off when they endanger your peace. You never ever let them lead, because once they do, you're no longer thinking, you're just reacting. And that's exactly where manipulators want you. They want you apologizing for things you didn't do. They want you explaining yourself for boundaries you had every right to set. They want you saying yes to what you hate and no to what you need. Why? Because your emotional nature makes you predictable. You'll break every rule to avoid guilt. You'll betray yourself just to be liked. You'll give up your own dignity just to avoid making someone else uncomfortable. That's not virtue, that's slavery. The ones who win in this world aren't the most emotional. They're the most emotionally disciplined. They know when to feel and when to cut it off. They know how to stay silent in chaos, how to smile in betrayal, how to walk away from tears that are nothing more than tactics. This doesn't make them evil, it makes them free. The truth is, people will always test you. They will provoke you just to see if they can pull your strings. And if you react, you're predictable. You're readable. You're controllable. But if you respond with silence, with calm, with total emotional neutrality, they panic. Why? Because their weapon didn't work. Their story didn't move you. Their anger didn't scare you. Their crying didn't soften you. You stayed still. You stayed in control. That's power. That's the kind of power no one can take from you. Because when you no longer need to be liked, when you no longer feel guilt for doing what's best for you, when you no longer fear being misunderstood, you become untouchable. That's the beginning of true freedom. That's the edge most people will never develop because they're too busy reacting, over-explaining, and drowning in feelings that were planted in them by someone else. You have to understand, manipulators don't need facts. They just need access to your emotions. They don't need to be right. They just need to make you doubt yourself. And once that doubt enters your mind, your decisions are no longer your own. That's why detachment is your only shield. You don't have to stop caring. You just have to stop letting that care make decisions for you. You have to stop letting your empathy be a leash. You have to stop letting other people's pain control your peace, because most of the time it's not even real. It's performance. It's manipulation. And even if it is real, it's not your responsibility to carry. Once you learn to detach emotionally from manipulation, everything changes. You stop reacting. You stop engaging. You stop explaining. You start thinking. You start watching. You start controlling the flow. They can scream. They can beg. They can cry. And you don't move. You analyze. You calculate. You decide on your terms. That's emotional dominance. And in a world where everyone is trying to get a reaction out of you, your ability to stay silent, calm, and cold is your greatest weapon. Empathy is a beautiful lie sold to you as a virtue, but designed to keep you weak. Society glorifies empathy because it benefits the manipulators, not the empath. The more you feel for others, the more vulnerable you are to their tactics. They don't want you to be logical. They want you to be emotionally enslaved. They want you to drown in someone else's pain until you forget your own needs, your own truth, your own life. You were trained to flinch at pain that isn't yours, to rescue those who would never do the same for you, to bend your boundaries until they snap. That's how the world exploits the empath, by turning their heart into a leash. They call it kindness, they call it compassion, but the truth is far darker. People weaponize their suffering. They broadcast their wounds to get special treatment. They act like victims to bypass accountability. They'll cry in your arms, bleed on your floor, and use their story to justify every line they cross. And if you dare to say no, you're the villain, the monster, the cold one. They don't care what's right. They care about control. They care about getting what they want. And empathy is the perfect tool, because once they have your sympathy, they have your mind. Now you hesitate. You feel guilty. You start second-guessing yourself. You delay cutting them off. You allow one more conversation, one more chance, one more excuse. And every time you do, they sink the hook deeper. They aren't healing. They're feeding on your time, your energy, your guilt. They disguise it as connection, but it's parasitic. You become a reservoir for their chaos. And worst of all, you think it's your duty. That's how dangerous empathy can be when it's unguarded. The world doesn't run on kindness. It runs on leverage. And manipulators have learned how to make their sadness a weapon. You're not dealing with emotion. You're dealing with strategy. Some of the most broken people are the most dangerous because their brokenness is their excuse for everything. They'll lie, cheat, steal, betray. But when you confront them, they point to their trauma, their past, their pain, and suddenly you're apologizing to the person who stabbed you. That's not empathy. That's emotional blackmail. And if you don't wake up, you'll keep letting it happen. You'll keep giving second chances to people who sharpen their knives behind your back. You'll keep letting guilt silence your truths. That's why detachment isn't cruelty. It's clarity. When you detach, you see the difference between genuine pain and weaponized suffering. You see who's hurting and who's manipulating. You stop reacting. You start observing, and most importantly, you stop sacrificing yourself to save people who don't want to be saved. The empath must evolve. You can feel everything and still not respond. You can hear their story and still walk away. You can understand their pain and still say no. That's real power. When your empathy is under your control, not theirs. Because here's the truth they won't tell you. Some people don't want help. They want control. They thrive in chaos. They sabotage every piece they're given, and they seek out empaths not because they love them, but because they know empaths will break themselves to fix someone else. That's the trap. That's the game. And if you don't master detachment, you will lose over and over again. You'll keep bleeding for people who wouldn't flinch if you died tomorrow. You'll keep feeding fires that were never yours to put out. And all the while, your life slips by. Your goals decay. Your mind erodes. That's what happens when empathy has no boundaries. You become a tool, a sponge, a servant. But when you detach, everything changes. You stop being their therapist. You stop being their savior. You become something rare, an empath with a spine. And that kind of person terrifies manipulators. They can't guilt you. They can't shame you. They can't pull your strings anymore. You become emotionally invisible to their tactics. And when that happens, they either flee or expose themselves fully because without your emotional reactions, they lose power. They can't hold you. They can't control you. They're just left there naked in their lies. That's the moment you win. Not with shouting, not with revenge, but with silence, with distance, with the calm certainty that you owe no one your peace. You don't owe anyone access to your energy. You don't owe them your empathy, especially if they've weaponized it against you. You owe yourself clarity. You owe yourself protection. You owe yourself the life you keep sacrificing to fix people who refuse to grow. So guard your empathy. Harden it. Sharpen it. Let it be earned. And until then, keep your peace cold. Your heart locked, your mind clean. You are not here to be drained. You are not here to be used. You are here to live fully, freely, and emotionally untouchable. They don't need weapons to break you. They just need your reactions. That's the battlefield of emotional warfare. You think you're dealing with arguments, but you're actually navigating traps, triggers, pressure points. They know exactly what to say to make you crack. They've studied you, your kindness, your insecurities, your past mistakes, and now they weaponize all of it. A manipulator doesn't shout. They whisper. They play the victim. Then suddenly the accuser. One moment they're crying, the next they're attacking. This isn't chaos, it's strategy. They push you, pull you, keep you spinning. Because as long as you're reacting, you're not thinking, you're not protecting yourself. You're too busy defending, explaining, justifying. That's their goal. Keep you emotional so you can't be rational. Every guilt trip, every silent treatment, every sarcastic jab, they're all tactics to destabilize you. When you break your calm, they win. And if you respond with anger, now you're the problem. If you respond with silence, now you're heartless. If you leave, you're the betrayer. No matter what move you make, they twist the narrative until you're the villain. That's how emotional manipulation works. It's not about truth. It's about control. You must understand they don't want resolution. They want dominance. That's why they bait you into arguments with no exit. They accuse you of things you didn't do just to make you prove yourself. They dig up your past, insult your character, challenge your morals, anything to pull a reaction out of you. And when you react, they act surprised, calm, innocent. Why are you so emotional? You're overreacting. I was just joking. They poke until you bleed, then blame you for bleeding. And the worst part, you fall for it because you're human. You want to explain. You want to clear your name. You want to be understood. But in that moment, you become a puppet, and the strings are your emotions. That's the game you must stop playing. You want to explain. You want to clear your name. You want to be understood. But in that moment, you become a puppet. And the strings are your emotions. That's the game you must stop playing. You cannot win against someone who thrives on your reaction. The only winning move is to become emotionally silent. You let them speak and say nothing. You let them accuse and you offer no defense. You let them play the victim and you walk away. That's power, not screaming, not matching their drama. Power is being completely unmoved by the storm they create. It's the art of emotional ghosting, not disappearing, but becoming unreadable, unreachable, untouched. That's what scares them, because once they can't manipulate your feelings, they lose their grip. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer programmable. You become dangerous. Why? Because you've stopped being emotional currency for their ego. You've stopped being a mirror they can distort. You've become something they cannot control. And in a manipulator's world, that's terrifying. So, how do you become immune? First, learn to recognize the bait. Guilt, shame, pity, flattery, passive aggression. These are not conversations. These are psychological attacks. When someone starts with, "After everything I've done for you," that's guilt bait. When they say, "No one else would care like I do," that's control bait. When they twist your words or pretend not to understand you, that's confusion bait. The key is to observe, not absorb. Hear the words, but don't let them penetrate. Let the silence in your mind become your armor. Second, stop explaining yourself. You don't owe explanations to people who are trying to manipulate you. Every explanation you give is a new angle for them to exploit. If they truly cared, they'd seek to understand. But manipulators don't want understanding. They want leverage. So starve them. No defense, no long texts, no emotional reactions, just stillness, detachment, boundaries delivered with the finality of a stone wall. Third, reclaim your internal power. The moment you realize that nobody has the right to control how you feel, everything changes. Your peace is not up for negotiation. Your sanity is not a playground. If someone tries to use your emotions against you, that's your signal to disengage completely. You're not cold, you're clean, you're not heartless, you're strategic. You've realized the truth. Feelings don't always belong in the fight, especially when the fight is designed to make you bleed. Detachment isn't apathy. It's precision. It's knowing when to care and when to cut off the power supply. Because once you stop responding, the whole game ends. They throw their tantrums into a void. They cry to an empty room. They test you and get silence. That's when the illusion breaks. That's when the spell dies, because they need your emotional energy to survive. You don't need theirs, you never did, and now they know it. Because being emotionless isn't about becoming robotic. It's about becoming unbreakable. Stay sharp. Stay detached. And if you're ready to destroy every emotional chain they've ever wrapped around you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because this isn't just content. This is psychological warfare.